So with Assassin's Creed Mirage being out for a few weeks now and a lot of people finishing the game, I think there's an interesting discussion to be had regarding the game's protagonist, Basim. That is, was he the hero of the game or the villain? It's especially thought-provoking knowing how the game ends and how we know Basim in Valhalla. I am going to give a spoiler warning here for those who have still not finished Mirage. I am going to be talking about the ending and the story in general, so you've been warned. But a question I'm starting to see from a lot of people is whether or not Basim is the hero of the story or the villain. And, well, like most AC stories, it's a little more complicated than that, but I thought it'd still be fun to dive into and talk about. Basim is certainly a unique protagonist amongst the series for many, many reasons. I mean, first of all, he's the only protagonist that has appeared in another entry aside from Ezio and Altair, which I think really helped me better understand the character and really allowed the writers the opportunity to flesh him out that many other protagonists in this series never got. After finishing this game, I was very happy with the decision to make a game following Basim. Ever since Valhalla had come out, I was saying he was by far the best character in that game, in my opinion. And seeing what led to the person he is in Valhalla in this game was very cool to see. But Basim almost feels like a completely different person for a good chunk of Mirage's story. Partially because he kind of is, but he also was much younger and had more of an optimism to him. I think the goal with Basim at the beginning of Mirage is to show this different, lighter side to the character, since we already saw this older, cynical version in Valhalla. And at the start of Mirage, Basim really does feel like the traditional hero of the story. Granted, he is a street thief, but he has his aspirations about rising up and making a difference. He said it himself.
Because being a street thief is not the peak of my ambition. I have more to offer this world than my nimble fingers. They just cannot see it yet.
So from the beginning, he had this calling to a higher purpose and wanting to help fight injustice, which of course is represented in how he practically begs Roshan to let him join the Hidden Ones. This need to serve a higher purpose and help others comes from his father, which the game touches on quite a bit. Basim clearly idolized his father and wanted to make a difference as he did. Nihal, who actually just represents Loki's personality, even calls Basim out on his hero complex multiple times.
It is no inconvenience to stand up to our oppressors as the Hidden Ones do.
Do you think yourself some hero of tomorrow? The next Gilgamesh?
Then of course things happen, Basim joins the Hidden Ones and starts hunting down Order of Ancient members who are corrupting Baghdad. I think it's pretty safe to say that Basim feels like the hero of the story for about the first 90% of it. There are a couple of instances where Basim sort of doubts the Hidden Ones and what he's doing, but from a morality standpoint, Basim still seems like a good person. Well, as good as you can be stabbing people with hidden blades for a living. But he doesn't really make any morally questionable decisions until the end. Nothing that would make me ever classify him as a villain. For a while, there's no real sign or indicator of the man he would become in Valhalla until it all starts to go wrong. Because Roshan is effectively the catalyst for this change within Basim. Roshan almost reminds me a bit of Al-Mualim from AC1. She's kind of a hypocrite and makes a great example of some of the flaws with the philosophy of the Hidden Ones. They're all about protecting and valuing free will, yet Roshan constantly tells Basim to serve without question. Every step of the way she tries to dissuade him from asking questions and learning more about himself. Very similar to what Al-Mualim did to Altair in AC1, although Altair's questions were more about his targets and less about himself. The only difference is Roshan didn't look to use an apple or something to seize control. She just strongly believed in what the Hidden Ones stood for and represented. But this seed of doubt in the Hidden Ones is initially planted by Ali, the rebel leader who calls out some of the hypocrisy of the Brotherhood.
Does it not bother you that those you obey are the same ones who make the rules demanding your obedience?
They do not control me. I am free. I fight so that others are free as well.
Everything you do serves the Hidden Ones. That is a strange kind of freedom.
And Roshan may end up being right in the end. Knowing Basim's truth, it probably would have been best if he never entered the vault. But you can't really blame Basim for seeking answers and defying Roshan, because the way she went about trying to control him was all sorts of wrong. She lied and hid the truth from him, tried to keep him as an obedient disciple who serves without question or complaint, and then tried to kill him for seeking those answers he desperately searched for his entire life. If anything, Roshan pushed Basim into doing what he did, and then she asked him one final time to just trust her and not go into the vault. How is he supposed to trust you when you've lied and manipulated him this whole time? It's a little late for that, Roshan. Again, I'm not saying Roshan is wrong for wanting to keep Basim from entering the vault, but she handled the situation in one of the worst ways possible. But Basim's actions are still his own. Well, at least at this point. But once Basim enters the vault and embraces Loki's memories and personality, this is obviously where the big change happens, and where some people may argue he becomes more a villain than a hero. However, I still wouldn't consider this version of Basim to be a villain. If anything, he feels more like a tragic character. He found out the one person who stood by his side nearly his entire life, the one person he could actually trust, and his best friend was really just himself. He was by himself all along. That's gotta be such a depressing revelation. So it's no wonder he chose to embrace this personality. It has the face of his best friend and the only thing that's been by his side the entire time. Now, there is a bit of a misunderstanding with how the whole Basim-Loki dynamic works. It's something I misunderstood for a while as well. Loki's consciousness is not alive within Basim. Basim is the reincarnation of Loki, and he has his memories and his personality, which is represented by Nihal, but he is not Loki himself. So Basim is still Basim at the end here, he's just chosen to embrace the memories and personality of Loki, who's a lot more self-centered and self-serving. Hence why Nihal was constantly trying to get Basim to only think and look out for himself. But with this version of Basim we have at the very end, it's easy to connect the dots to the one we know in Valhalla, who I still wouldn't consider a villain. I wouldn't consider him a hero, that's for sure, but he does still serve the Hidden Ones, albeit not as faithfully. But again, can you really blame him? And he seeks revenge on those who tortured Loki and caused him great pain with those memories that are represented by the Jinni that's constantly haunting him throughout the story. So Basim becomes a character driven by vengeance, in the search for his fellow Izu reincarnates, like Eivor of course. But even before this, Basim was still a vengeful character. This isn't a quality unique to Loki, as is highlighted by this scene with Nor.
I will make every last one of them pay.
Vengeance is not our way, brother.
Our way? You sit bleeding to death and still cling to this foolish dogma. And for what? Our creed could not protect Alamut, and neither could I.
Basim was already someone who was driven by revenge, and so that's a main motivation for him in Valhalla. Now, some might consider him a villain for wanting to kill Eivor, who's Odin's reincarnate, but you have to keep in mind, Odin attacked and imprisoned his son along with Loki and tortured him. So when you look at things from Basim's point of view, it's not too hard to see why he would want to kill Eivor. So at the end of Mirage, and even in Valhalla, I wouldn't consider him a villain. He's certainly a character that lives in that gray area for me, and perhaps can be considered as more of an anti-hero, but I wouldn't go as far as saying he's a villain. And that lighter, more optimistic Basim, who most certainly felt like a hero, effectively died upon entering the vault. Sure, Basim is still Basim, but he essentially becomes almost an entirely different person. And Kidu sensed that and did the smart thing and just dipped out. So to answer the question of the title, is Basim a hero or villain in Mirage? I think for pretty much the entire game except the end, Basim feels like the hero. And then it kind of falls into that gray area at the end and for the entirety of Valhalla. That's how I interpret it. I'm curious to hear what you guys think in the comments. At any point, did you consider Basim a hero or a villain? And did you like him as a protagonist overall? I know I really did, and it was so nice to finally have a character that we could follow through 2 games and get a longer, more fleshed out arc and understanding of. The last time that really happened is when we said goodbye to Ezio and Altair in Revelations. Plus, I find Basim's entire journey and development super interesting. I'd personally like to see more of his story, whether it's with another game or just a DLC, but as always, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and considered subscribing to the channel if you're new. A special thank you to my members for supporting me, and other than that, thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day, Assassins.